Well, I don't think Chuck could have teed it up much better than that, to be honest with you. He literally, the last 3 slides, probably I could put back up and start over again, because it's the beginning of my presentation. Everyone who's talked so far has used the word engagement, everyone. And that's what I'm here to talk about. And everybody's used it in a very appropriate way, starting with Jackie. And it matters, but I'm here to put a more laser focus on it and talk a little bit about how much it matters, okay? So this presentation, if nothing else, is for you to, if nothing else, leave the room saying, boy, I tell you what, it really boils down to engagement, doesn't it? And how do we get there? So we're going to learn, we're going to talk about engagement, and we're going to talk about recognition in concert with engagement. Another word that's probably been on just about everybody's presentation, okay? Recognition and engagement go together. They're flip sides of the same coin. We're going to talk about some tools that we can use to engender greater levels of engagement and talk about how to deploy those. And again, you've probably heard of some of them. You know of all of them, okay, whether it's wellness programs or what have you. The question is, are we using them in a way that actually maximizes engagement? And if not, how do we get there? And I'm actually going to point out occasionally throughout the presentation some specific examples. Nice enough, we have a customer who joined us here, one of All-Star's customers. Sarah Gallo is here from Neopost. And if you have any questions for Sarah now, during or after, or even during the Q&A later, feel free to direct them right to her. She is a senior marketing manager for Neopost. Neopost is one of All-Star's customers. Neopost is a very large company that focuses on mailing innovation solutions and a lot more. 1,500 or so employees, I think, 1,700 or so employees. Pretty good sized organization. And they've come to us and deployed much of what I'm going to talk about here today. So, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides. I just want to set the stage real quick. You probably know this, but it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to hear it in kind of a synopsis form. If you haven't seen a demographer speak, by the way, someone who talks about the demographics of this country, the world, and where it's going, I highly recommend that you do so. I'd tell you where to find one, but just go ask the Google, and I'll tell you. But there are 10,000 baby boomers a day retiring. I actually put that in the slide, and then I looked it up because I've heard it 1,000 times. But is it true? It is. On average, plus or minus 10,000 baby boomers a day retire. Millennials aren't coming. They're not soon to be here. They're here. I'll show you on the next slide. They're the largest part of the workforce. I don't know how many people know that or not. It's not that, boy, they're growing. They are the largest part of the workforce. And most of those 10,000 baby boomers that retire get replaced with 25-year-old and 30-year-old, well, for me anyway, kids. Right, thank you. And unemployment is below 5%. The normal measure of unemployment, I know there's a lot of different measures. There's underemployment, there's this, there's that. But basically, unemployment, by the number we most know, you see in the Wall Street Journal, is below 5% and projected to stay low for a while. It's not a good combination for employers, especially if one of their biggest concerns is holding on to their employees, holding on to their most engaged employees, holding on to their most talented employees in particular. And HR managers know better than anyone that it costs an awful lot to replace them. And I apologize for doing this, but I don't want to do this. I don't think it's, looking down's worse than looking left. So that line you see going up, the blue line is your millennials, 53.5 million of them in the workforce now, and they're still piling in. And I don't know what we're going to call the generation that comes after them, but in fact, Gen Y sort of got edged out there. It's supposed to be X then Y then millennials, but Z, right? Yeah, Z, okay. So, and that slowly degrading line you see on the top there, that top orange one is the baby boomers. So they're just going to continue to trick down. I just turned 50. It was a really ugly and bad experience for me, but I am technically a what do you call it? A Gen X. My brother, who's 16 months older than me, is technically a baby boomer. He was born in '64. I was born in '66. So there's no, and we're similar people. So there's no real hard and fast lines here, right? The difference between a young baby boomer and an old Gen X and a young Gen X and an old millennial isn't substantially different. We're going to talk about what trends they have and how it affects your workforce. You've all seen stats like this before. The cost of replacing a worker, 25 to 400% of their annual salary. Sometimes it's expressed differently. But the hard and soft cost of replacing a worker, 25 to 400%. $60,000 worker leaves the job. That $15,000 cost of replacing them at the low end isn't just advertising and job fairs and what have you. It's the disruption to the workforce while they're gone. It's the training of them once they show up again. It's how good they are versus the person they replaced. It's the fact that it may not cost $60,000 to replace them. It might cost $65,000. Something that the younger generation knows really well, because that damn social media helps spread the word on things like this, is if they strategically change jobs throughout their life, their lifetime income is likely to be substantially higher. In fact, the Wall Street Journal, just I think last week, had an article that suggested it could be double. Okay? So your grandfather, my grandfather, worked at a job for 40 years. It's a cliche, but it's true. They worked at a company for 40 years. This is coming out of the Great Depression. Getting a job was, that was enough, and stay, put food on the table. Kids today understand that that's not necessarily their goal. Compensation and recognition are basically, they go together hand in hand in terms of they're ranked number 1 and number 2 on any survey about why people leave their jobs. First of all, you'd think it would be compensation and everything else, right? It's not. Compensation and benefits are cited as one of the top reasons people leave their job, but almost at an exact same percentage, plus or minus in study after study, is recognition. People who leave their job say, my boss had no idea what I did, and it's particularly about that relationship, right, between the boss and then also your closest coworkers. Nobody cared, nobody noticed, I moved on, right? So recognition is enormously important to holding on to those people. And engagement is needed to deliver proper recognition. So it matters a great deal, and engagement is what we need to get there, among others. So just taking these in real quick succession, right? Workers that are not engaged damage the work environment, which means they damage everything. Customer service, right? Customer retention, sales, whatever, morale. And most workers are not engaged. I'm going to talk about the study that proves this over and over again, and it has for 20, 30 years. Most workers are not engaged. Now, that may not be true at EMC, okay, because I have to say it's a very impressive presentation. I know EMC well, I know how good they are. May not be true at CVS, may not be true at any other speakers here today. New Balance certainly seems to be getting it right. But in general, across the board, on average, 70% of workers are rated as not engaged. Okay, so you do the math, and that's most companies have that same problem. And worse yet, many of them are actively disengaged. So not being engaged is one thing. It's like, okay, I got a job, I do my thing. Actively disengaged means I just don't care. You can't convince me to care about anything you're trying to teach me about safety, about quality, about customer service. I just don't care, okay? And I think that's in the 15 to 20% range. And millennials are the most disengaged. It doesn't mean millennials are the bad workers. They're not. They can be fantastic workers. But they crave praise, and they crave engagement, and they crave recognition. They grew up in the Webkins era. I don't know if anybody remembers what Webkins are. I have teenage kids. They got Webkins. It's a stuffed animal with a thing. You went online, you got points. Points equal prizes. They grew up in the points equal prizes era. And don't get me wrong, points equal prizes and recognition and rewards is prevalent through all, but it's really prevalent with millennials. So here we are with millennials piling into the workforce, biggest part of the workforce, craving engagement, recognition, and rewards, and companies that haven't necessarily adjusted to that reality. So that data on the previous slide comes from Gallup's State of the American Workplace study. If you haven't seen it, again, Google it. It's really good. It's been out there. They've done, I think it's ridiculous, tens of millions, maybe 100 million people over 20 or 30 years have taken the simple 12-question quiz. Sometimes it's referred to as the 12-question survey. And the questions are things like, in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. Okay, and then you rate on a scale of 1 to 7, I think, or 1 to 5, what have you, how true that is, right? And the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. All right, those types of questions measured on a scale using Gallup's scientific analysis, and again, New Balance, Chuck seem to be right on mission here with measuring his own levels of engagement. Those are the ones that give you some idea of how much people care about the job they work at. All right, signs of disengagement. Those probably look familiar if you have some disengaged employees, and under any circumstances, even if you're great at it, you have some disengaged employees. Those aren't the signs I worry about. The guy balancing the pencil on his nose in the meeting is pretty much telling me he doesn't want to work there, right? It's the guy who's staring you right in the face, right? And he's thinking about fantasy football or any number of other things, but he's looking right at you. You can't tell, but he's disengaged, whether it looks like it or not. So opportunities for engagement. And on the right side of that page, and you can't see what that is, but what that is sort of a map of marketing materials. And I'll go back to New Balance. I saw paintings on the wall and posters and everything that extolled the company's virtues and values. Fantastic, right? Use every possible opportunity to communicate your values, your goals, your objectives. And that's what this is for the Neopost program that we do. The Neopost program, which is branded Total Rewards, all right, has a number of different components. There's Neo Hunt, which is basically a component of the program that allows employees to help find new leads. There's Neo Service, which rewards them for years of service. There's Neo Spot, which provides managers the ability to spot recognition. There's a peer-to-peer component to it as well. All right, so it's a diverse group of programs all underneath one umbrella called Neo Total Rewards. That Neo Total Rewards program drives engagement at every possible level in the organization for what it was created for. I shouldn't say at every possible level. There's more that you could put in there, but the slide that's coming up a little bit later on, you don't try to do everything at once. You start by doing what you can do well, and eventually you layer on. I think CVS gave us great examples of that as well, as you build up to a more fully engaged culture, all right? But so the opportunities to engage are wellness programs. I think some enormous percentage of US companies, over 1,000 employees, say they have a wellness program. Virtually all of them, right? Most of them are a shell. And I'm not picking on anybody, but most wellness programs in corporate America are out there in name only or have a few small components to them. They're an enormously positive way to engage your employees if you use them properly, right? So at All-Star, we have a program. Internally, we test everything on our employees, so our employees love working there. We have all kinds of recognition reward programs built around everything you can imagine because we have to guinea pig and test everything, right? So in the All-Star program, you receive Starbucks, not coffee, but the actual points when you participate in some of these programs. So in a wellness program, if you are part of a walking team that walks the most steps, and we put you in teams when you do this, it's not individuals, everyone on your team will get the most points for the week. It will get points for the week if you had the most steps for the week, and you get the most points if you had the most steps on that team. Same thing with weight loss. Same thing with taking a health assessment. Same thing with any of these things. We try to draw attention through recognition and rewards, and don't kid yourself. I understand there might be some purists in the room that say, and I'm not picking on anyone, but that say, oh, I shouldn't have to reward them for doing what they should do anyway. Okay, maybe true, but if you can get a 4-to-1 return, which is the normal return on investment for a properly built recognition reward program, if you can get a 4-to-1 return, motivate the behavior and get them further engaged by putting some sort of chit, okay, some sort of award at the top of the heap, you're going to get the behavior you're looking for. They're going to build muscle memory. You don't have to reward them forever and a day, okay, but you use it to jumpstart the program, to put some energy behind the new wellness initiative, the safety initiative. We run a lot of safety programs. They're numbers-driven, they're people-driven, and they work fantastically well when you engage, recognize, and reward the right behavior at the right time and start to build muscle memory. And in the interest of time, I won't drill down on these, but training programs, don't stick them in a room and leave them there for 9 hours. Training is a perfect opportunity for engagement. And again, quizzes are a perfect opportunity to see how well they retain the information they learned, and so on and so forth with customer service, peer-to-peer programs. I talked about quality and all these other suggestion box programs and what have you. Those are all opportunities to engage at a higher level, and those are all opportunities that are missed if right now they just sort of exist in your sphere, but aren't used specifically to find ways to really connect with your employees, particularly your millennials. So this cartoon I thought was pretty fitting. I'm sure if you can see it in the back, it says, you know why I'm sure the sales chart will be great? Because this is the morale chart. So you can see the chart in the background, the line going straight up, saying morale is just going straight through the roof. This manager in this particular cartoon is confident that the sales are going to be great because engagement, recognition, reward, morale, happy workforce, lower turnover, all come together in the end and support the bottom line in a positive way. And again, I think New Balance demonstrated that pretty well as well, right? The manager with the greatest need for engagement. So who owns it? Right, I'm talking HR managers for the most part, although I think I referenced Sarah as a marketing manager, so this is a perfect example. Sarah had a disengaged group of workers. She was trying to get a message through. She was trying to generate more leads that would generate more opportunities to sell, more pitches, more proposals, and ultimately more sales. And the program that was out the door was underperforming. And their workforce was not overly engaged, okay? So who owned engagement in this particular case for Neopost? Sarah did. She raised her hand, okay? And she said, I need to do something about this. All right, now, the HR manager, and Sarah and I have talked about this, she went down and talked to HR after, and the HR manager said something what Jackie kind of referred to earlier. Said, great, go for it, do it. You know, you need it. But it wasn't going to emanate from HR to begin with. Sarah wasn't going to go to HR and say, I need more leads, and HR wasn't going to say, well, why don't we put a recognition reward program out the door, right? So the manager who owns it, most of our safety incentive programs, virtually all of them, maybe all of them, come from a safety manager that I met at the National Safety Conference or ASSE, coming to us and saying, how do I go beyond good to great in reducing my OSHA incident rate? How do I get there? And they took the ball and ran with it. And then after we launched the safety program, somebody maybe from HR or operations comes in and says, well, we got a wellness program too. And part of making them safer on the job is making them healthier on the job, okay? Obesity and tired driving are linked together at the hip with sleep apnea, right? So wellness and safety all come together under one roof. You build a platform and you use that as a way of engaging, recognizing, and rewarding. So any of the managers, customer service, safety, operations, sales, and ultimately HR have a need for these types of programs, and you have to basically find that need wherever you can find it. Okay, path to engagement, going to speed up a little bit as I run short on time because I don't want to drag anybody too long. But the path to engagement is to engage somebody who knows how to do this, self-serving, I admit it, doesn't have to be me, but find somebody who knows how to build these programs. Create a brand, okay? Don't just put out, generically named programs. Put out highly branded programs built around your culture, paint them on the wall, okay? Put up a sign, a poster, a flyer, use social media, put it in every email, put it in your newsletter. Promote it the way Coca-Cola promotes their brand, because it's a brand that really matters to you and your company. It's as important as anything else you will do. Right? So put a brand name on it, promote it continuously, create buzz. There's your rewards program. Okay, points-driven recognition, rewards, rewarding teams, rewarding individuals. Great way to create buzz, great way to address any audience, particularly millennials. Communicate it, as I said, activate and empower managers, right? So peer-to-peer recognition is a great way to promote the values of your company and really see who your star performers are. Manager spot awards, which Neopost has built in as well. Great way to get a manager. If a manager can walk up to someone on the spot and say, fantastic job, and recognize them right on the spot, that person is engaged. That person can't possibly show up at the bottom of that Gallup poll. Okay, they cannot say their manager didn't know or recognize what they were doing, right? So empower managers, bring initiatives together under one platform. I hit this, safety, wellness, service awards, right? If you have a bunch of disjointed programs, and I think if there was any comment I'd have today, and it's not criticism, I did see in some of the presentations we had so far, probably because one was done 10 years ago, and one was added 5 years ago, and one was added 2 years ago, there is a lot of programs that seem to be functional, but disconnected. If you can start to connect those pieces together, okay, and have one total rewards program in your company that speaks to your values and supports customer service, wellness, safety, service, all under one roof, maybe difficult, maybe you have to go back and unwind a couple things and then put them back together. But once you do that, boy, I'll tell you what, you've got a group of employees that are really focused on what you're focused on. And the message is getting through the clutter. Call it the clutter of everyday life, right? I think there's a Drucker that also said, insanity is doing trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Their lives, who was it? Was it Einstein? I'll give him credit for that too, whatever. So whoever said it, it's true, right? If they're disengaged, okay, and you're not getting through and the message isn't getting through, you have to find a different way to deliver that message. So bring initiatives together, walk, then jog, then run. I guess I'll say fly too, similar to a previous slide, right? Take it up to the higher level. Again, thank you, Chuck, I appreciate it, because this is a goal. It's not the only goal, but this is a goal. And so how do you get the money out of the C-suite? How do you go to the C-suite and say, we really want to do this, it's going to cost a few bucks, and it's supposed to return us 4x. But you got to give me the money first to prove you can get back the 4x. What are you going to do to convince them to do this? Well, one thing is this. I bet you there's a lot of people at New Balance that don't mind being on those really positive lists of best places to work. It matters. It matters to C-suite people. It matters to the president of the company to sit there and say, I want us on that list. And by the way, with social media today and the way millennials and everybody else, the way information flows around Twitter and what have you, being on that list will get us more job applicants. Will have us holding on to our people longer. Any of these lists about innovators or top places to work or what have you, really important, really helps sell. The other way you do it is you talk about earnings. You can't see this chart, I can't see this chart. The one thing I'll tell you is, because I have seen the chart, the right side, those 3 bumps on the right side, highly engaged companies have greater earnings per share, greater employee retention, and greater overall performance. Sales growth, earnings per share growth, and employee retention. Those are the 3 on the right side. If you're a company that rates high on engagement, that's what you have. And everything on the left is if you rate low on engagement, you're losing your people, you're losing your market share, your profits are going down, you're frankly on a path to going out of business. So I come back to the first slide about engagement. Engagement is enormously important. Engagement literally enables so many of the other things, probably virtually everything else you heard about today. And with it, you're growing and growing more profitable and have a sustainable future. And without it, frankly, you're on somewhat of a downward spiral. Whether it's a 2-year downward spiral or a 20-year downward spiral, it's going to catch up with you. And it's going to hurt more and more in a highly employed workforce, 5% unemployment, and with a workforce that's piling in right now, it's already piled in the millennials, all right? And these are just some numbers. Again, I wanted to come back to the Neopost program. I mean, just by changing up the program, just by coming up with a more engaged way of finding leads and then running them through the system, just in the short time that program was out the door, 39,000 new meters were found. This was engaging employees to turn in indices, to turn in envelopes that have indices on them so they can find out whose mailing meter a company might be using, a competitor. Out of those 39,000 using surveys, okay, using a process to go through and qualify them, 20,000 qualified and 15,000 actual leads per year distributed to a sales force that can go out and turn leads into sales, okay? And it started with engaging her own employees, just their own people, not even salespeople, just people, just the receptionist, the secretary, this one and that one, anybody in the company to come in and turn in these leads, these envelopes that could serve as leads, leading directly to or indirectly to sales, profitability. Brian Galonek, All-Star Incentive Marketing. That's Sarah. If you'd have any questions, happy to fill in the blanks after the fact. Thank you.